Hello, my name is Anders William. I'm the CEO of Solar, and with me today is also our CFO, Michael Jeppesen. So welcome to the telephone conference that we have in connection with the stock exchange announcement we made yesterday. We would be opening up for answers on questions that you may have related to the stock exchange. This means that we would appreciate that we could focus on the acquisition of MAG45, the preliminary results we've made for 2015, and the preliminary the expectation we have for 2016. Obviously, we will not be able to go into very specific market or segment details regarding the 2015 results yet, because these are preliminary numbers. So during this call, we may have to refer to the publication of our annual report, which is due on the 24th of February, as also announced previously, and we ask for your understanding in that context. So without making a longer speech than that, we will actually open up already now for Q&A. So I'll hand it over to the operator.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for the speakers, please press 01 on your telephone keypad. And we have a first question here from Jonas Gullborg from Carnegie. Please go ahead, your line is open.
Thank you, and good morning. You write in your announcement yesterday that you will pursue synergies across the group, especially within sourcing and logistics. How much do you expect these synergies to amount to?
You're referring to the MAG45 acquisition?
Yes.
Yes. We have not gone into the specifics of the cost synergies because basically we have acquired MAG45 because we see good opportunities for growing the business profitably under our ownership. So that's why the cost synergies that there are will not be instrumental to the acquisition case. Profitable growth is an instrumental reason for acquiring them. So given the size of MAG45, it's not so that we have put a lot of emphasis on cost synergies, but we do believe that there are cost synergies to be reaped. And I'll give you some examples of that. We believe that there are opportunities in sourcing in the overlapping product categories. Again, I must remind you that MAG45 have many products that Solar does not have in the product portfolio today. So those sourcing opportunities can go both ways. We see opportunities in warehouse logistics where we believe that there are some competence in Solar that can be of benefit to MAG45. We believe the same is the case on transport, where we believe that we may have agreements that are better than what MAG45 has today. Obviously, there's on the admin side with finance, IT, and so on. Then on sales synergies, we believe that there's opportunity for leveraging customer relations. Some of the relations that Solar has today with industrial customers that could be of benefit in due course for MAG45. And then finally, we also believe that the long-term ownership of MAG45, now that we've acquired them, will strengthen their commercial credibility in front of some of the big customers they have or will get in future.
Okay, a small follow-up here then maybe. Could you put some color on the concentration of revenue in MAG45? On number of customers or the 10 biggest customers, how much they are revenue?
Well, we can say we wouldn't like for competitive reasons to go to be too specific, but we're not in a situation where the consolidation is so big that it poses a commercial risk. I guess that's what your question is about, actually.
No, that's true, and you should notice that we're talking blue chip customers here. If you look into the customer base of MAG45.
Yeah. Okay. Then a slight specific question on 2015. Could you give an indication of what the organic growth in Norway was in Q4?
You'll get that when we disclose the final figures.
I'll wait then. And then lastly, at almost the exact same day last year, you guided for organic growth of 0 to 2.5% for 15 and ended up just above 5%. Is it fair to assume that you have included the same level of cautiousness into your initial guidance for 2016?
I think you know exactly what the answer is going to be to that, Jonas. We give the guidance, and we don't start interpreting our own guidance on whether the flavor is positive, negative, conservative, or aggressive. This is our guidance, and we will see later on in the year whether we will need a correction of that guidance. This is our best estimate right now. Okay. And it's not from a market perspective very different from what we said after Q3.
Nope. I'll wait for that one too then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Christian Johansson from Danske Bank. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Thank you. First question regarding the guidance. You guide for 0% organic growth or flat development in organic revenue. We know you've talked about cost inflation before being significant, and then you now also talk about these investments in your digital platform. So with increased investment in digital platform and cost inflation but no growth, how can you end at a unchanged earnings level in your guidance?
Well, there are several opportunities there. You know that as well as we do, but bear in mind that the restructuring that was announced in, I think it was Q3 2014, you did not see the full year impact in 15 of them, so there's still some benefit of that to be achieved in 16 versus 15. It's the Netherlands we are talking about here, so that is clearly going to help us.
Okay, so that's the primary positive factor on margin, you can say?
That still stands, what we said then.
All right. Then my other question is regarding MAG45. So I understand that they have a different customer portfolio and a different product portfolio, but besides from that, can you just try and explain exactly what they do different to what you do?
Yes, I would encourage you, if you have the time, to actually look at their website because it's a relatively complicated type of a business, and that means that could actually help. But I'll try to explain it very briefly. The big difference is that MAG45, what they focus on is the tail of the spend of industrial companies. So very often you have the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the products cover 80% of the volume for an industrial company on the sourcing side. So what MAG45 is actually focusing specifically on is the 80% that only covers 20% of the volume, because there you have a disproportionate amount of time typically being spent by the industrial customer on the sourcing side compared to the value of what they're sourcing. That's one thing. The second thing is that is often with data quality, which is quite poor, simply because it's not given that much priority by an industrial company. This is where MAG45 is really, really good at going in and pulling out a lot of maybe mediocre quality data, washing it, and actually identifying what is it that is being bought, and looking at how can MAG actually work as a sourcing partner for the industrial company, and thereby actually reduce the total cost for the industrial company and reduce the complexity. And that goes for whether it is sourcing, finding alternative suppliers, or it's actually managing their stock on site. So the level of sophistication is significantly higher because this is data-intensive type business. So that's just a flavor of it, Christian.
But I understand that and I appreciate it. But in terms of the logistics, is there any difference there? Because I looked at the website and so sort of what you saw in terms of the warehouse they show and so on looks fairly similar to what you do. So
sorry, go ahead.
So is it fair that part of the business is fairly similar, whereas the difference lies in what you just described?
Well, the difference, if you go in and look at the warehouse that they have in Holland, I was there yesterday. you kind of get a familiar smell from going into a Solar warehouse. But if you look at the type of products, they're quite different from many of the products that Solar has in the warehouse. And the intimacy with the customer is significantly higher because this is actually more an outsourcing type business where you outsource not only the sourcing but also the handling to a MAG45, and that is for Solar somewhat unusual. I'm not saying that it's completely different, that we can find examples within Solar already today, but it's a competence that we have little of in Solar and they have a lot of in MAG45.
We can illustrate, for instance, they have competences within clean tech, which you don't really find in Solar, just to give you an example of the specialized knowledge they have.
Okay. So in terms of these growth perspective, which I understand has driven this acquisition, when should we expect to see some tangible results? I mean, I guess judging by what you indicate for 2016, it must lie beyond that. Is that correct? It's
most likely that we will start seeing an impact in 2017 because you need to appreciate that the let's say the lead into business is somewhat longer because it's a relatively long process going in and scanning the data, identifying where the opportunities are, and then getting into execution with the customer on multiple sites. So it takes a bit longer from getting a lead to getting invoiceable sales. So it is. We expect that we will start seeing growth next year, and that's what we will be preparing for this year.
But the advantage with this is also that when a customer first is in, the intimacy, as Anders mentioned before, is much higher, meaning that the switching cost also for a customer is much higher because they really get integrated. So it's quite a complex setup.
Okay. And then my last question, can you quantify in terms of the sales that MAG45 has, how much goes to customers in countries where Solar, as of today, is not present?
No, we don't quantify that, Christian.
All right. Enough. That was all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Per Bossett from HSBC. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, good morning. I have two questions, if I may. So first question is a bit naive, is on the magnitude of the earn-out, something like 100 million Danish kroner. It seems high compared to the fixed amount that you are going to pay. Is there any uncertainties on the execution or on the profitability which justify such a magnitude? And just to be sure I understand, when you say that you will pay 80 million at the closing, it includes already 20 million of earn-out. Is it fair? And the second question is on the acquisition pipeline for Solar. Is it active? What sort of countries are you looking at? What sort of business? Are you looking at similar business such as MAG45 business or more similar to Solar? And is there more competition than usual for acquisition? Thank you.
Yeah, let me just clarify. The 60 million Danish kroner are unconditional. Then at closing here, we paid additional 20, bringing the total price to 80. We do expect that we will end up in total paying 100 million, not 100 million in earn-out. That's the 100 million including the 60 million. So that's how you should interpret it. Sorry if the wording wasn't that clear.
Okay, but you mentioned that the total could be at the most 160 million.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the earn-out that in theory could go to that, bringing the total price to 220. But that would require a tremendously pick up in earnings, and we would love to get into that situation, trust me. But we think that the most likely outcome is we'll end up with a total price of approximately 100.
Okay.
Okay, and on the acquisition path that you asked about on business expansion, we remain focused on profitable growth, and we are interested in expanding our activities within integrated supply, so the MAG45 field. There's not necessarily a lot of companies to acquire in that field, but we are open for investing in growth, whether it's organic, which we will do with MAG45, or it's inorganic if there's an opportunity for further consolidation in that field. And this does not stop other activities we have on the M&A front. We've been quite specific that we've been pursuing a couple of different avenues in our business expansion strategy, and we will continue to do that. So there's basically no news on that compared to what we've said previously. So we are still active in this, on this one.
Okay, and may I just ask a follow-up question, again, a naive question, but is MAG45 similar to the MRO businesses that we find in a number of countries?
MAG45 is both active on MRO, but also on bill of materials. So I actually think that if you compare MAG to several others, they have a larger share of bill of material business than most others.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Hans Gregersen from Nordea. Please go ahead, your line is open.
Good morning. I have 4 questions, but let me take one at a time. If we look in sort of 3 or 5 year perspective, what is the margin potential of this business, and on what return requirements have you bought the business? What do you expect to gain in return on investment on this capital? That's the first question.
There's no doubt that we expect that this will generate a return on invested capital substantially above our WACC. That's the clear target.
And the WACC is?
No doubt about that. You tell me, but if you guess it's between 8 and maybe plus minus 8, maybe 9, I don't know.
It would be unfortunate if it's not double-digit, ROCE.
Is that pre or post-tax?
That's after tax, Hans, because tax exists in most of the countries where we operate.
And what margin potential do you see for this business?
I don't think the margin potential is that relevant. The relevant question here is what the return on invested capital can we generate, and I think we just answered that. Okay. This is a very asset-light business.
Okay. Who's competitors to this company? Is it internal organization or what other sort of competitors can you mention in the external environment?
I wouldn't like to specifically pinpoint competitors. There are a number of bigger companies in the U.S. If you take somebody like Grainger or Wesco, they're active in this field. Integrated supply is not a new phenomenon in the U.S. It's relatively new in Europe, but in most of the cases, you're actually looking at a change in the mindset of the industrial companies in becoming, let's say, more sophisticated in defining what should we do ourselves and what should we outsource to other companies, and that's where we see a quite interesting opportunity for companies in Europe who are getting more mature in defining what is an important internal activity versus what is better to put to somebody who is more specialized in it than yourself.
Well, but what is the risk, let's say, if you have a big system supplier that they would also pick up on this? I mean, they would, by nature, have some sort of competitive advantage, I would argue.
The key advantage of MAG45 is that they've been active in this for quite a number of years, and this is not a question of buying an off-the-shelf system. There's a lot of know-how in this because when you're dealing with many thousands of different products, and some of it is electrical and some of it may be rubber gloves, that takes a special skill, which we believe MAG45 has. But of course, there will always be competitive pressure.
Then next question, if you look on your EBITDA guidance, you indicated that you would have to invest more on the sales side. How much are we looking at, and is that a one-off year spend, or is that something we should expect for a couple of years down the road?
Well, we didn't actually give any specific guidance on it for good reasons. We don't want to share that with our competitors, but of course, it is a substantial amount because it wouldn't make any sense to mention it. And you should see it. I think we announced it already back when we disclosed the Q3. It was on the CEO agenda that we would invest in a digital solution that fronts the customers. As you may remember, we have invested quite a substantial amount in the back-end systems, which luckily came to an end. Now we are investing in everything that fronts the customer, and I think I mentioned it before that some of that will eventually hit the P&L. But it's very difficult to say what will happen next year because everything is moving so fast within this area right now. So I don't think anyone can really predict.
And just to add to what Michael is saying, the reason why we're also mentioning this is that at the end of the day, we think it's the cash flow that's actually more important. But of course, if we are in a situation where the investments we make on the digital front end does not get capitalized, then you should maybe not be so surprised if the capex we have that's hitting the P&L is affected by this. So we have recently been asked questions about whether we are under-investing in the business. We don't think that's the case, but we may be in a situation where some of this is getting on the P&L rather than on the balance sheet. But as you had told me beforehand, cash flow is cash flow.
But Anders, just to understand your answer, I understand you don't want to give specific numbers, that's fine, but can you at least indicate to us, we have a sense of, is this a multi-year investment we're looking at, or is it just a one-off in 2016 from a P&L perspective?
There are some of these investments that are not going to come every year, to put it like that, but it's not so that we can say we're investing in a digital solution and then it's going to be 5 years or 10 years before we do something again. That's what Michael is indicating, that the speed of change is significant. But the whole point here is that we're going to make the necessary investments, whether they hit the balance sheet or the P&L, and at the end of the day, it's a cash flow that we suggest that you look at.
Okay, final question. Just going back to your ROCE requirement for the acquisition, when do you expect to reach that?
Well, it's probably not going to be the first year because, as we said before, it is a transition year, and as Anders also mentioned, to get the growth really flying, it really takes a lot of work. They have a good, healthy backlog of orders, which are constantly increasing. But it will take some time. Clearly.
So it's some years down the road, for sure.
We'll have more transparency next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the next question comes from Pierre Bousset from HSBC. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, good morning again. A follow-up question on Rexel, who have disposed of its businesses in Poland and in some Baltic countries. Out of curiosity, was it on your radar screen? Was it an acquisition that you considered? And do you have any view on this move from Rexel?
Of course, we have to be very careful at what we're saying, but given that we've been very clear that we're not interested in buying more of the same, I think that answers your question.
Okay.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Christian Johansson from Danske Bank. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Just a follow-up householding question here. How will you report on this MAG45 segment-wise?
It's all industry customers, so we'll go into the industry.
Okay, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. And as a reminder, if you have a question for the speakers, please press 01 on your telephone keypads now. And once again, that's 01 on your telephone keypad to ask a question. As there are no further questions, I'll hand the conference back to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention and for joining in on this conference call, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.